It is the 12th of the 6th, 2025. The time is 5 minutes past 10. And we might have ourselves a story here, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. It's going to get techie than techie things over the next 10 minutes or less. Because Toto, the boy who cried wolf, might be eyeing up Charles Leclerc, who, by the way, over at the other side, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse atop, might be flittering his eyes back at Toto, the boy who cried wolf. The context for the avoidance of doubt is always key. We've said a gazillion occasions on this channel that Toto will drop kick in the chest a King George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk, if indeed he has the opportunity to sign a four-time 5-time champion, Max Emilian Verstappen. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. But of late, there's been a couple different stories. We know this because of last year, summer break, Miami Grand Prix race weekend. Of course, Toto was having conversations with Team Verstappen, Raymond, Yoss. That was going on. We know that for a fact. However, talks cooled off and now we have ourselves a situation where Toto's being advised by people close to Daimler, the parent company, the owners indeed of Mercedes Petronas AMG, that potentially Max Verstappen might not be the right fit. Let's check this out. We'll go through this together. I'm connecting the dots. Maybe it's a nothing burger, conjecture and speculation each and every single turn, but maybe it's something. There will be a gazillion people that say, Cameron, you're barking up the wrong tree. This is nonsense. But they said the same when we were speaking of Lewis to Ferrari. No, will never happen. Lewis is a Mercedes man. Where is he going to go? Well, Ferrari is where he's going to go. And that's why we want to take these things seriously, because sometimes in Formula One, there is no smoke without fire. Let's read this courtesy of the guys and girls over at F1 Oversteer. And for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journalistic publications are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Here's what they say. Mercedes may now have to postpone Max Verstappen move because it could upset one key shareholder. Mercedes clearly haven't given up on signing Maximilian Verstappen, but it seems like Toto's dream of landing the soon-to-be 5-time champion may have to wait for another year. Wolf's reaction to the incident between Verstappen and George Russell told a story. Didn't want to come out and criticise Max openly, did Toto, making excuses like that's what the great ones do. Please see Ayrton Senna or Michael or Lewis back in the day. Sometimes it's us against them, and I don't necessarily disagree with Toto there on that. Diplomatic in the circumstances was Toto, keen not to burn his Max Verstappen bridges just as he did in 2021 Silverstone, failing to check on Max Verstappen when he was in the hospital then. However, here's the piece that you need to know. Mercedes car company crisis could thwart Maximilian Verstappen. So we have this conversation at the altar of financial resources. Motorsport Italy raises another issue that could prevent Verstappen from joining the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. The German car company are enduring something of a crisis at the moment. And when Maximilian Verstappen's signature will cost anywhere up to $100 million per year, Houston, we have a problem. As noted by BBC, this article continues, Mercedes sales are falling, prompting them to launch a cost-cutting drive. They want to save several $1 billion per year. Parent company Daimler only own a third of Mercedes F1 team. The other 2/3 are owned by Wolf and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. So Jim Ratcliffe, I mean, Wolf might be doing all right, billionaire settings, but you know, if you're paying attention to Manchester United, EPL, English football, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going through issues, problems financially. Therefore, can you make the argument that Mercedes can afford Maximilian Verstappen? So too, some have said, paddock aficionados and F1 insiders have said that Max Verstappen and his very unique, aggressive way of racing isn't necessarily aligned with the gentlemanly nature that you associate with Mercedes as a brand. Keep that in mind. This article continues that you've got to look at the base. I mean, the max wage of Lewis Hamilton is 83 million, all included with bonuses, 59 million for Maximilian Verstappen. You got to imagine, to sign that dude in perpetuity, as Aston Martin are desperately trying to, then you're going to be looking anywhere up to 100 million. It gets techier than techie things, though. Let me show you this, chat, because again, context is key. We know me go big for a second and then we'll talk about this. We know that they've been struggling over it. That's not the one. Come on, Cameron, sort out your life. We know that they've been struggling over at Scuderia Ferrari, and the pressure is doing one of these as far as Frederick Vasseur. It will get techier than techie things if Frederick can't bring home some silverware. I said a couple of weeks back that the pressure, the circumstance will get techier than techie things if he can't turn this ship around now. Doesn't have a gazillion years, Frederick Vasseur. He's got to do something this year. Now, we know that they're already starting to talk about reprioritising, focusing on 2026. Techie. Why? Because that means he's asking another year. More runway, more lead time is what Frederick Vasseur is demanding. If past his prologue chat, the oldest story in F1 history is that Ferrari team principals, please see Arriva Bene, Stefano Domenicali, Mattia Binotto, they don't get too long. 3 years is probably about the tenure on average before they get binned off. Elkann will want to see payback on his investment on Sir Lewis Hamilton. So too, he'll be looking at this juncture, Frederick Vasseur with the sceptical hippo face. You know who else will be looking at Frederick Vasseur with a sceptical hippo face? That he has a name, and his name is Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Jean Alesi. Why? Because Charles Leclerc has given 7 years of his career in and around, I want to say about 5 years of his career to that bloody team. What's going on? Where's the car? Where's the operational excellence? Sons accepted for 2-second pit stops. Where is it, chat? Nowhere to be seen. And Charles Leclerc, by most aficionados' reckoning, is point to point the quickest driver on the grid. One of the only ones who can race with Max Verstappen wheel to wheel. Mention no names. Bahrain 2022. He's good. He's good. Okay, so he's got a cheeky mistake in his locker. Abso-flipping-lutely. But does he deserve this, chat? At the altar of the ineptitudes, multitudinous ineptitudes of Scuderia Ferrari in perpetuity? No, absolutely not. And as F1 fans, we want to see the best drivers in the best cars. And Charles Leclerc is one of them. Now it turns out, as at this morning, there is growing impatience in the Charles Leclerc faction that his inner circles are saying, I don't think we need to carry on. I don't think we should continue with Ferrari in perpetuity for all that they're representing. You can characterise the tenure by ineptitude and incompetence. They've had nothing. So, of course, it makes sense then that Charles Leclerc is going to be growing impatient now. So too his broader team, just as was Sir Lewis Hamilton a couple of years ago, because Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, could not give him a car. Corriere della Sport, or Corriere della Sera, right? And again, all F1 publications and all that are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Here's what they're reporting. We're going to read this because it's techier than techie things. And again, context, bloody Nora. You're forgetting, Cameron. George Russell, he's the jigsaw puzzle piece in this equation now. Nothing happens without George Russell. But we know Toto's saying that George Russell is the one to take us back to the promised land. Mr. Pioneer, the leader of Mercedes in the absence of one Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. Well, how about that contract, Toto? Do you know what I mean? Make your actions match your words. You haven't given that dude a contract. Why? Why is George Russell's contract due to expire at the end of this year? Why would you leave it so late if you didn't intend to sign one of Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc? Non-rhetorical question, because we know the answer. He does intend to sign one of those bods. Max Verstappen will be first order priority. But if he can't get Max, if Max doesn't align with Daimler's strategic priorities nor their financial resources requisite, then of course he'll reach out to one Charles Leclerc. Won't he? Wouldn't you? I think I would. If I couldn't get Max, then of course I'd go to Charles Leclerc. And again, it sounds like Max might now be committed at Red Bull, potentially, TBC. But again, if you can't get Max and you failed negotiations as at Miami last year during the summer break, then you will, of course, if your name is Toto the Boy Who Cried Wolf, be looking at the next best one. He has a name, and his name is Charles Leclerc. That's why, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, they haven't signed George Russell. That is why. I don't care what Toto wants to talk about protracted negotiations. That can be the only reason, because they're looking over at the other side of the fence to see if there's better options. Don't believe me? Go and read the Ross Brawn book. He'll tell you exactly who Toto, the boy who cried wolf, is. Nothing if not two-faced. Those were his dealings with him then when they were selling Brawn to Mercedes. Two-faced. He will do what's best for the company, what's best for shareholders. And in this instance, you're not going to make out, you cannot make the argument that signing Charles Leclerc is not an improvement on George Russell. That's why I'd argue they haven't signed him. Don't believe me? Have a word with Ferrari, John Elkann and co. Why do you think they hesitated to sign Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz to long-term deals? Because they were flittering their eyes, flirting with one Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton at the time. There's your context. Let's have a look at this article now, because it's techie. Go on then. Corriere della Sera reports that Ferrari put Leclerc's doubts about the future, why he has lost confidence and does not rule out leaving. And again, this is a leak per his inner circle. They will be considering it. Charles Leclerc can't sign with the red team and the yellow badge in perpetuity if indeed they're not going to give him the most important thing as far as the minerals requisite to winning a championship of the driver's variety. And that, of course, is a car. This article writes, the bad start to the season is leaving a mark on Ferrari. Vasseur is also at risk. And for the first time, Leclerc is in doubt despite a long contract. And again, contracts are, he can get out of that contract. This article writes, 2 podiums in a row, and in Canada the pursuit, again there's translation issues, yeah, but it was originally written in Italian, but I digress. And in Canada the pursuit of the third begins on a track named after Gilles Villeneuve. The relaunch, yes, blah blah blah. Here we go. So let's get to the meat of it. Relaunch, yes, but the results are far from the initial objectives. A disappointment that is causing profound effects. Various open fronts in Ferrari, the work of Frederic Vasseur put under scrutiny by the company's top management, Hamilton's outburst, and above all the doubts truly present for the first time in Leclerc's head. He's rethinking, chat. He's rethinking. His dream, as far as his priority, is to win before it's to drive for Ferrari. Nobody wants to drive for Ferrari if they don't have a car, and they are losing. The French boss has been asked to account for his unsatisfactory performance. His position is no longer solid. We're talking about Frederic Vasseur, team principal, of course. He's accused of not knowing much about the internal environment, and it is curious that this weekend the trajectory of the Ferrari will cross at a distance that of the other red-driven, translation issues, bear with, driven by the man who could replace him. Bloody Nora, it's techie this. Go on, let's scroll down, because I just want to get to the Leclerc stuff, because that's what you guys are all here for. Behind the team principal case is the anxiety of the drivers. Leclerc in the meantime, here we go. Leclerc in the meantime, from his closer circles, some have let slip questions about the contract that ties him to Maranello until 2029, by which time he will be 31 years old. 31. Still in his prime, but just barely. Time is a finite resource in Formula One, for the avoidance of doubt. A definitive marriage, continues this article, characterised by continuous declarations of love, but his confidence no longer seems total. He relives cyclical crises, and it will not have escaped him that Piastri in 1 year, since McLaren returned to the top, has won almost as much as he did in 7 years at the red team. So I was right in the first instance. Of course, chat. Why wouldn't Charles Leclerc be looking somewhere else? You can't give your life to this Ferrari team if they're not going to build a car capable of winning races and therefore championships. The key in this lock that unlocks driver season, however silly season, is of course George Russell. If Toto, the boy who cried wolf, knows that he can get a whiff of Maximilian Verstappen's contract, then you know the outcome, the eventuality already. But the same stands for Charles Leclerc. Why? Because paddock insiders say to a man, by all accounts, that Charles Leclerc is the quickest point-to-point driver on the grid, notwithstanding his multitudinous mistakes of the unforced variety. Toto, Frederic Vasseur, but moreover, Charles Leclerc, aka modern-day Jean Alesi. It is your move, sirs.